The lipid hypothesis. Very hypothetical. There are 3 problems with the lipid hypothesis. First, it's too broad. This idea is not a single step, but a whole staircase of concepts. It starts with the idea that cholesterol and saturated fat are bad for you. The second step in this idea is that cholesterol causes buildup in the arteries. And third, that buildup will cause you to have a heart attack. This is not a good hypothesis because it has too many steps, which makes it almost impossible to test fully. There are too many questions. How do you know cholesterol and saturated fat are bad for you? And those are 2 things. Is one thing worse for you than the other? Are they only bad when combined together? Or do they act differently if you have more than one than the other? Then there's the next step and more questions. Is that stuff in the arteries really made of cholesterol? Is it made of saturated fat? How does it cause a heart attack? And then there's the third step. Does this always lead to a heart attack? The wrong answer to any one of these questions could invalidate the entire hypothesis. Second, heart disease is not a single disease, but a complex of diseases which all behave differently in the body, causing all different kinds of damage. How likely is it that cutting 2 things out of the diet is the best answer to all of these diseases? And finally, third, there are numerous risk factors for heart attack, of which diet is only one. There's weight, which is often related to level of exercise, blood pressure, stress levels are critical, and a major risk factor, smoking. So let's get back to that first step. The idea that eating saturated fat and cholesterol is bad for you. Although they are often jammed together by doctors and the media, cholesterol and saturated fat are not the same thing. They have a completely different chemical structure and have very different uses in the body. Guess what? The body makes cholesterol in the liver. If your body makes it, you might just need it. When you eat more cholesterol, the liver produces less. When you eat less, it produces more. Have you ever heard of familial hypercholesteremia? These are people whose cholesterol is naturally very high, like in the 400 area. If the lipid hypothesis were correct, then these people should all drop dead all the time. But in general, people with familial hypercholesteremia live longer than the general population. Now, the next step, the claim that cholesterol builds up in the arteries causing plaque. First, we need to make a distinction between the stuff that blocks arteries and the fatty deposits that actually support arterial walls. Cells that need to be a strong protective barrier have lots of cholesterol and saturated fat in them. These cells often appear at junctures in the circulatory system where there is turbulent blood flow, and they are completely normal and healthy, and may even have been created before we were born. Without strong arterial walls, we increase our risk of hemorrhagic stroke. That's the kind of stroke where your blood vessel blows out. So what is plaque? Plaque is the stuff that actually blocks your arteries, but it's not made of cholesterol. What is it made of? Mostly fibrous tissue, some of it with fat, calcium, and a necrotic, calcium-heavy core. Necrotic means dead, so the center of the plaque is dead tissue. And the last step, this cholesterol causes a heart attack. Except that sometimes it doesn't. In fact, a lot of the time it doesn't. In the Framingham study, half of the people who died from a heart attack, that would be myocardial infarction, had low cholesterol. And in the elderly, high cholesterol seems to be protective. In a study done by Dr. Harlan Krumholtz, done in the Bronx, New York, 997 elderly men and women were studied. During a 4-year period, nearly twice as many people with low cholesterol had a heart attack or died from one compared to those with the highest level of cholesterol. What that means is that people with the lowest cholesterol had the most heart attacks. And most studies show that there's no correlation at all between high cholesterol in women and heart attack. In fact, old women with high cholesterol live the longest. Here are some additional facts that contradict this theory. Remember, if even one piece of any theory is contradicted by facts, then the theory is wrong. The amount of fat in the American diet has held steady at about 30 to 40% for the last 90 years, while heart disease rates were rising. The Maasai, these are African herders, have 60% of their calories from fat, and they have no heart disease at all. And their cholesterol levels are very low. And what we think of as the Mediterranean diet, well, that's just not accurate. It isn't all olive oil and vegetables. It's not low fat at all. Eggs are tucked into sauces and soups and casseroles. There's plenty of sausage, butter, cream, and lard. People on Crete may consume up to half a pound of goat cheese a day. That's 25% of the calories being from fat, and 70% of that being saturated. So part 1 of the theory is wrong, and part 2 of the theory is wrong, and part 3 of the theory is wrong. Sounds like we need a new theory. The question of how to avoid a heart attack might be better phrased as how do we stay healthy?